Work is hell, and in the case of Yuppie Psycho, corporate work culture is a literal nightmare where you have to contend with awful coworkers 1 minute and clean up a pile of corpses the next. Exaggerating office jobs into actual insanity-inducing horror shows isn't a particularly novel form of satire, but it is usually an entertaining one, and certainly one you can get me to readily sign up for. So, let's dive in and see how this nightmare fuel shaped up. As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm gonna tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today, we're signing up for the worst job ever in Yuppie Psycho. So, let's talk about that terrible, no good, very bad job. Yuppie Psycho starts with the main character, Brian Pasternack, getting a job offer that's way too good to be true. See, he's a lower-class citizen with barely any education, and suddenly he's getting recruited to Sintra, about the most prestigious company he could work for in the world. So, what does he get recruited for? Well, there had to be a catch in there somewhere. See, Sintra's so undisputed as a company because the owner went and basically made a deal with the devil, and now the devils come to collect. And like any good corporation would, Sintra's trying to wiggle out of the deal they made, and doing a very bad job of it. And you happen to have the qualities most important to handling the problem. Nobody knows who you are, and you're utterly expendable. It's a good setup, but if I'm being honest, that's all it's really amounted to so far. You spend a majority of your time figuring out creepy puzzles by following hints written in blood and sneaking past demon lip lady things, but most of these puzzles are pretty straightforward adventure game fare. Thankfully, there's nothing here that's so abstract it'll make you tear your hair out trying to guess what the devs want you to do, but it's all pretty straightforward. It's easy to digest, but not particularly meaty to dig into. But that's okay, because these games are all about the story, right? Except there's not much to lean on here, either. The plot at this point hasn't introduced much new beyond the initial setup of which bad kill which. But it has spent some time revealing a bit more about its characters, and that's perfectly fine. After all, plenty has been said about how the characters are the lifeblood of any story. Yuppie Psycho's characters are all quirky and have their moments, but they're not particularly endearing. They're all competently written to fit their assigned roles, but perhaps they're written to those stereotypes a little too cleanly. You get some side characters, like your crazy boss who thinks he's a military officer and rides around the office on a horse, who stand out through just sheer bizarreness, but none of the central characters have really grabbed me in the 5 hours I've been spending with them. In a lot of these regards, Yuppie Psycho has left me with an exceedingly neutral impression. I want to be perfectly clear that I don't think this is a bad game. There's nothing to really fault with it, but on the flip side, nothing it's done has gotten me invested, and considering I'm 5 hours in, that's kind of a problem. The one shining point where this game really stands out is its graphics, which 90% of the time features some inventive sprite work, but on the rare occasion blow up into these sweet cutscenes that maintain the pixel graphics but go with a full anime art style. Those cutscenes are a really unique look that Yuppie Psycho nails, and they're supported by some really inventive and creepy looking monsters. But that's about the extent of what impressed me, and I have a hard time diagnosing why beyond the fact that maybe this game just isn't for me. My best guess is that it has something to do with the game's atmosphere, most notably how Yuppie Psycho is a bit uneven in its application of tension. So in most horror fare, tension builds up over time as a given scene develops, but Yuppie Psycho's tension doesn't ever really build. It just kind of leaps around based on what kind of emotion you're supposed to feel in a given scene. First, you're going from wacky fun times with the coworkers. Then the next minute, the game jumps from 0 to 10, the walls are covered in blood, and you just find a pile of bodies left ignored in the middle of the office. So instead of getting that naturally mounting sense of suspense and dread, you step into a new room, and now you're walking straight into a talking wall that wants to eat you. Yuppie Psycho is very interested in lampooning how awful working in a big corporate office is by using a horror framework. The punchline to every joke is work is hell and suffering, but the setup bounces wildly from going, man, coworkers, am I right? Straight into welcome to a living hellscape meat grinder that literally murders 100 employees a day, warps the survivors into monsters, has satanic rituals on every floor, and will eat you alive. And, there's just not really anything to bridge between the two moods. The game never builds up enough preceding tension for me to feel nervous during the sections where I'm supposed to be scared. But to make a leap of our own, it's time to start wrapping this up. So, what do you get out of 5 hours with Yuppie Psycho? I guess that I'm probably halfway through the game, but I have yet to run into anything that's held my attention, and I've only made it this far out of obligation more than anything. It's a solid concept to be sure, but the execution just leaves me kind of underwhelmed in an unusually crowded month for horror titles. This was one that I just kind of existed through without feeling any particular enjoyment or chagrin, and I wish I had a more worthwhile opinion to express. Overall, Yuppie Psycho feels perfectly serviceable, just maybe not for me. Aside from my musings on the tone, there's no one thing I can really point to as bad, and even that is a matter of taste to a degree. Sure, the puzzles feel a little simple, but they're perfectly well executed, and sure, the characters didn't really do anything for me, but they're all competently written. Despite my experience, I wouldn't rush to steer you away from Yuppie Psycho, and a quick glance at the Steam reviews suggests that I'm significantly in the minority for bouncing off of this one. So, hey, you may very well enjoy it more than I did, but I will personally be setting this one down. If you'd like to try some horror games that I was a little bit more into, you can check out what I had to think about The Missing back in one of my old quarterly wrap-ups, or you can check out my thoughts on murder mystery The Hex, both of which I found significantly more chilling and effective than Yuppie Psycho. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this first 5 review. If you did, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. Thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.